Before I got deported, I did spend some time in a immigration detention center, and it was not what I expected. It actually was a lot worse. My name is Tanya. I got deported in July of 2023. I got deported after living in the US for 40 plus years legally, and I wanted to just talk about my experience at the detention center. So, welcome back to Deported to Paradise. So, I got deported back in July of 2023, but I got there in March to the detention center. So, since I was coming from prison, they took me and about 15 or 20 other women, and we were in Alabama, so they had to take us down to Louisiana. I guess it took like a day and a half. I don't remember, but it just seemed so long. It seemed like a week to get there, but I know it wasn't that long. We went on one bus and I think two vans. We had to switch out. So by the time we got there, it was really late at night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. So we basically at that time got fingerprinted, signed off on our property, got dressed out, and answered a few medical questions. And then they took me to my room where I was sleeping that night, and it was just so intimidating. It was a big room with probably 100 beds. I don't even know, bunk beds. And it was really dark. So when I went in there, I was trying to find a bed, but it was so dark. I just didn't even know what to do at first until I got, you know, until I was able to focus. I was able to pick a bed and I fell asleep. Well, the next day, they changed my outfit. So if you're coming from prison, you get a red outfit. If you're coming from, like, if they pick you up off the street or whatever, you get a green one. So I changed outfits, and then I was taken to a different room with other women that had been in prison. So, which was a lot cooler. I had people to talk to. It was smaller. So, there's probably about 20 to 25 beds in there, but I was able to get a bottom bunk, and it had their we had our own bathroom. There was like three stalls, two or three stalls, and then the shower was right there off of the toilets, and it was big. There was probably like five shower heads, so one person could shower or five people could shower. So that was nicer than the room I was at before. So it wasn't too bad as far as that goes. But as time went by, I got to know the people, the guards. I thought the guards were useless at Aliceville prison. These people at this facility were even so much worse than the guards at Aliceville. I didn't think you could get much worse, but obviously you can. They were just so rude to us. They were so rude. They would, you would ask a question, they would either ignore you, or sometimes they would say, well, it doesn't apply to you because you're not a citizen, you're not a resident, so the laws don't apply to you, like any of the laws. So we're like, okay. So we had to ask them for toilet paper. A lot of times they'd be out. So we're like, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to use sheets, pillows? Like, oh, we didn't have pillows. Sheets or towels? What were we supposed to do? And they're just like, oh, that's not our problem. When there's toilet paper, we'll let you know. So they were just awful, awful people, and for the most part, if you spoke English or Spanish, even though most of them didn't speak Spanish, they they were able to communicate with the Hispanic women because a lot of them spoke English as well. So, but if you came from a different place, they couldn't even be bothered to go on their translation app, which they're supposed to do, and talk to the person that way. They wouldn't even do that. So the guards there were awful. So the food was terrible, almost as bad as the guards, but not quite. I think it might, I think they might be Tupac's back there. It might be okay if you were vegan or vegetarian, but I'm not. So everything was made from soy. I didn't like it. It was not good. Yeah, it just wasn't good for me. What a lot of the women were doing before I went is they were telling them that they were allergic to soy so they could have real chicken and whatever else they were serving. But by the time I got there, they had too many women saying they were allergic, so they started actually testing people. Went back and tested the women that were still there, and then tested the new women that were coming in to see who was really allergic to soy. So I didn't, I didn't even say, I don't even know if I would have said anything, but so the food was terrible. But my best friend there, who was getting deported to Germany, her and I would get together and we would take the food from the cafeteria to our room, which was not allowed, and she would make different things out of that food and the stuff that we had in our commissary. And it turned out so good. Heike was just such a great person. We became really good friends. And we would split everything, and she would make me pizza. She would make me these little potato ball things that were so yummy. Just different things, and that's not anything I could ever do. I'm not creative enough or know about cooking enough to do that kind of stuff. So I will always love Heike because she really made the difference in there for me. The day-to-day life there was nothing. I mean, there was nothing to do. I would wake up, if I wanted breakfast, I would go at 7 a.m., but I hardly ever went to breakfast. After that, lunch is at 12, dinner's at 5. But other than that, there was, you just sat there. There was two TVs. They were on full blast, so it was really noisy. And we were allowed to go to the library, I think twice a week. And they started taking us out for rec once or twice a week, I don't remember. But it was so hot, so hot. I didn't like going outside. Some of the women did, but apparently we were there by a lake that had a bunch of dead crawfish in it, so you could smell that smell outside. Like it was just awful. So I didn't want to go outside most of the time. Um, so yeah, I try to spend most of my time reading, napping, because there really was absolutely nothing to do, which made the days go by so slow. I mean, so slow. It was just awful, so much worse than prison. And when I got there, I thought, well, this is going to be like it, when you have a criminal case. If you don't have a lawyer, one will be appointed to you. No, if you don't have a lawyer, you just don't have one, and you have to represent yourself, which I had no idea that's how it was. So thank goodness my parents got me a lawyer, which was very expensive, and I really didn't feel comfortable with my parents paying that, but they wanted to give it a shot. So obviously it did not work, but it was it was worth a shot, I guess, is what my mom would say. So I I am glad that I kind of went through that, only because now I'm going back and forth in depression. I would rather be here than be in that detention center. Yeah, so it gives me perspective on where I've been and where I'm at now. I have a beautiful home, and I'm not locked up. I can go anywhere I want. So I I do like the fact that, you know, I was there, and that's why. But when I got sentenced to get deported, I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave in a week. I don't know. It took 2 more months for me to leave. Um, Normally, when you were about to leave, we all had, well, we shared iPads. You could watch movies, listen to music, order your commissary. When you couldn't log in with your password, it meant you were leaving the next day. So my mom and my aunt were meeting me at Matamoros, which is one of the borders that they drop us off at, which they don't tell you the border. They don't tell you where they're dropping you off, but that's where they have been dropping people off the last few months or 6 months or whatever. So I just figured that's where I was going to go. Well, I called my mom and I was like, hey, my iPad's not working. Um, I'm probably going to get released tomorrow. So her and my aunt went to Matamoros that day. Like they picked everything up and just left. And then so the next day, I was waiting to be called, and nobody knew anything. Nobody answered my questions. Nobody said anything until finally I was like, let me speak to a supervisor. I told her, she made a call. And by this time, it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And she said that I was supposed to leave, but the plane had too much stuff on it and it weighed too much, something like that. I don't know. And so they booted me off without even telling me. So I was like, oh, I have to call my mom. And she was just mad. Of course, she left everything to go pick me up. She wasn't mad at me, but just those people are just, they don't care. They just don't care about anything, about people's time, about people's feelings, about any of that stuff. So I was just very, very happy once I was out of there. I mean, I was able to meet my mom at Matamoros probably a week after that. And from there, I took a bus to Monterrey, which is where I actually met my mom in Monterrey. So I got to Matamoros, went to the Mexican consulate, and they had like a Greyhound bus, nicer than a Greyhound bus, but that's where we all, uh, they took us to a few different cities in Mexico. Um, so once I got to Monterrey, I got to see my mom. I got to eat. I was out, even though it was late. It was like about 1 in the morning, maybe 3 in the morning. Uh, but it just felt good to be with family. So that was my experience in a nutshell with the immigration detention centers. I I know I have a lot of people, they'll write me on TikTok when they have a loved one in one of those places and they just want to know the process, or are their loved ones okay, or what, they just want some kind of information on the what's going to happen. So I knew this was a topic that a lot of people had asked me about. So thank you so much for watching. You guys are wonderful. I I've been doing a lot better than I thought I was going to do with this. So I'm really enjoying telling my stories and stuff like that. So please comment, share, like, and subscribe. All right, well, y'all have a great week and we'll see you next time.